What if I told you that my journey into videography didn't just start with the click of a button, but rather it was a journey of uncomfortable situations and unknown curiosities explored? Well, in this video, I'm gonna take you guys back on what it was like for me to start the journey into videography. Now, if you told me when I first started this journey that I would go from leaving a corporate job to eating oatmeal and toast in my parents' basement, making $80 every 2 weeks, not only would I not have believed you, I would have thought, why would I ever put myself in this situation? But sometimes when you make that leap of faith, you'll be very surprised on what you need to go through in order to get where you want to go. So I started my journey by leaving a corporate job to go work at a yoga studio for $10 an hour. Now, does that make sense? Not particularly. But what happened is I was working at this yoga studio because I was trying to get an understanding of what the company was like before I took them on as a client from my marketing company. I would then go on to have them hire me and pay me a retainer of $1,500 every month. Now, for a young kid that just wants to make $1,000 every month by himself, that seemed pretty good. But it wasn't until that third month where they actually let me go because I made way too many mistakes, and rightfully so. I was scheduling posts late. I had a lot of typos in my captions. I wasn't seen as a valuable asset to this company. And like anyone else, they let me go. However, they were nice enough to let me still work at the yoga studio at the front desk until I figured out another plan. Now, my current situation at this time is I'm making $80 every 2 weeks, eating nothing more than toast and oatmeal in my parents' basement. Now, at this point, I'm pretty sure like most people would have quit, went to another job, and then continuously making a good solid check every 2 weeks. But for some reason, I just wasn't satisfied with that. So I decided to stick it out. Now, the yoga studio had certain times where no one would be in the place and I would just be there, cleaning up a couple of things and making sure that the towers are fresh and clean. So I made it a habit that before the last person ended up leaving, I always did all the cleaning, make sure everything was set. So when the studio was completely quiet, I could work on my laptop to try to figure out my next move for my business. The only caveat, the camera's in the studio. I got contacted about a week and a half later in the email saying, hey, Quinton, we're sorry, but we're gonna have to let you go. We saw you working on your company in the yoga studio. We just can't have that. We gotta let you go. As distraught as I was, it lasted only about a week because then COVID hit. Now, everything is shut down. Now in this current situation, I could do what a majority of people did, which is sit on my butt, buy a bunch of things off of Amazon with what money, and catch up on everything on Netflix. Instead, I knew that I had to think of something, and all I had was a ring light and an iPhone 11, which was pretty new at the time. And I said, okay, I have an understanding of marketing and social media, so I'm gonna make content. And even though I wasn't an absolute expert, no one else thought that. So I started making social media content in my parents' basement, literally in this room, but this setup did not look like this. And I would go to local networking events, trying to meet people, try to figure out exactly what my business could be like or even what my business was, because I was still so confused as to what I was doing. And it wasn't until I heard something from Gary Vee where he said, create a podcast and invite local business owners on, and eventually, they can end up starting to work with you. And although I didn't know what my business was yet, I had a feeling that I don't know if it'll work, but I'm gonna give it a try. So mind you, I made this podcast in my parents' basement when no one's making any money because COVID shut everything down. But throughout one of those months, I eventually somehow accumulated about $1,000 within a month, all from my parents' basement. This is when it clicked and I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. I continued on with the fake podcast, and eventually I had someone contact me and say, Quinton, I love your videos. I'd love to do some work with you. I have a contract for you for about $1,600 for 4 videos. What do you think? Now in my head, I'm saying, duh. Why the heck would I not? That's the most money I've ever made in a contract before. Now, me getting paid a contract for $1,600 was super exciting for me. But it wasn't until I found out the breakdown system and found that I was only getting paid $400 per video. And these videos were pretty well spaced out. So it wasn't a lot of money at the time. But still, this at least let me know I'm onto something. I ended up getting this contract, but I realized I wanted to do this well and I didn't have a camera. So I shouted out to one of my friends who was actually doing movies the entire time I was in college playing football. And he eventually saw my content and was like, dude, I love what you're doing. How can I be a part of it? I added him onto the contract for outsourcing for the videos, and I would do all the editing. And we ended up delivering a pretty great product from what I thought at the time. Now, looking back at it, I probably think it's atrocious. But then I thought it was fantastic. Now, once the word got out that I was doing pretty well and I started posting my stuff on social media, word started getting out that I did pretty cool videos. This contract led to my very next contract, which was the biggest I've ever thought I was gonna get, which was a $5,000 contract to work with a nonprofit. I didn't know what I was gonna do because I was like, oh my gosh, now I really know that there's something here. Now, here's the problem. We agreed to the contract, they paid us our money, and now I have to shoot a couple of videos for this client, but when time came for us to actually get ready to shoot the videos, My videographer said, hey, I'm gonna be shooting a movie in Vegas. I'm not gonna be able to be there. And now I have no camera. So I'm like, what am I gonna do? Luckily enough, I made another connection, which again, and I will let you know this, in the world of videography, connections are very important because you never know when someone can save your life. So I actually ended up reaching out to a friend who did some drone work for me by the name of Matt, who actually ended up being fantastic because he had multiple different cameras, and that is exactly what was needed. But I learned a lesson in this moment. If I can easily be out of a camera by someone leaving, that means I need to start owning my own gear. Now, with the shoot coming up and with Matt agreeing, I still had to realize that I myself, being the owner of the company, had no gear. So I eventually ended up purchasing my first ever camera, which is a small little $600 Canon SL2. And along with it, I purchased a course because I never wanted to have a camera and just be struggling to figure stuff out. That would help me now understand how to operate this camera and beat the learning curve just a little faster. Then after a bunch of sleepless nights, I eventually was able to start using the camera in some of the shoots, and it actually turned out fantastic. Now, of course, I made the typical beginner mistakes because I wasn't well equipped in the field. And just a little side note, just because you watch all the videos in a course does not mean you know what it's like to actually operate it in the field. So keep that in mind. How much you learn is just as important as how much you apply it in the actual field. And from there, the rest is history. I eventually ended up going on to shoot a bunch of different videos from a bunch of different clients. A friend of mine even gave me my first wedding that I went on to open a completely different site specifically just for weddings called Poetic Films and Company. And I restructured the brand from culture branding to blank slate. And now we are more focused on the side of events and higher end production. That's it. That's how I got put into this world of videography. Not because I love the cinematic nature of the clips or not because I have a passion for art. It was because I locked in on a contract, I panicked and realized I don't actually own a camera myself, and not all the time can I rely on someone else to have the gear for me. So the lesson learned was ownership. I have now created a very successful videography company, and even more so now on my way to building a digital conglomerate. So that's the story of how I got started. And I'm very curious to hear exactly what kind of stories that you guys got started into the world of videography as well. But the lesson was simple. If you're running a videography company, at least own a camera. That's all for this video. And honestly, share in the comments your story on how you got started in videography as well. I'd love to try to build a community with you guys and see how I can even add value to you guys from the lessons that I've learned within my 4 years plus of videography, production, and cinematography. All right, catch you on the next one.